Today I'm here to talk about all the new release horror, thriller, and mysteries that I've been reading over the summer months. I feel like it's been a hot minute since I put one of these videos together, and honestly, there's a reason for that. Well, first off, just that it's been a really good summer personally in terms of getting outside and doing all the things that don't contribute to putting together a booktube video. But at the same time, I like to put these together once I have a good range of books, some hits and some misses, and really everything in between. And so I think I'm finally here to talk about everything I've been reading. I'll probably go through this pretty rapid fire since some of these books I don't have tons to say about, but I'd love to have you drop a comment down below. Let me know what you're reading, especially new releases, because I'm definitely on the hunt for some new all-time favorites, some best books of the year, and I'll talk about what I read, you talk about what you read, and we'll talk down below. All that being said, let's get started. First, let's start with the horror, starting with My Ex, the Antichrist by DiLouie, and this is a book that centers around this punk band. They were once at the height of their fame. Something happened during this riot, and now years later, we are seeing the aftermath. Now, this is one that I would largely recommend to those of you that love horror when it intersects with rock and music, and I feel like there is almost this mini subgenre that does exist. I see that intersection a lot. I think there just is a lot of overlap in terms of the people who read horror and are also metalheads, if I'm using that term correctly. I am not one of them, and definitely whenever I pick up a book like this, I always feel like it's hard for me to give an objective review because of the fact that I don't feel like the target audience. Not that I can't appreciate a book that is outside of my interest, but while I do listen to music, my tastes shift away from some of the more rock and punk bands, and just in general, I think I have very, let's say, average taste when it comes to music. I'm not really a hardcore fan of bands and so forth, and so this very much feels like a love letter to the bands of old, and very much reminded me of the Grady Hendrix book that I'm blanking on the title of it, but also deals again with the aftermath of a rock band. And so if you love that one, I would recommend this one. I did not love that one, largely for the same reasons, so it's really hard for me to give a strong opinion on how well this book accomplished what it was trying to do, because again, for me, it didn't hit on those nostalgia elements that I think it was going for. So I'd love to hear if anyone else has read this one as an early review copy, how you feel about this one. I found it was fine. I don't tend to absolutely love DiLouie's writing and stories and character work, so he's never been a 5-star author for me. So going into this one, I was just looking for a good book, and it was fine. Next up is This Vicious Hunger by Francesca, and this is a gothic style story where we follow this woman who is a widow. She gets the opportunity to work in this botany environment, and there she gets to spend time with this other woman who becomes with her quite entranced, and so the story follows them. It is one that is, again, gothic in terms of tone and style. You have a bit of this relationship between these women, and again, you have the lushness of the backdrop to the story, all focusing around plants. This book is one that I really think that, depending on, again, your interest in some of the subject matter, if you're someone who loves plants, loves a gothic environment, loves some kind of sapphic story woven into your narratives, you're likely to really enjoy this one. I am, again, someone who appreciates gothic style fiction a little bit more than I personally love it, especially during the summer. It's not the kind of story I'm drawn to. I think this book would work better in the fall if you're looking for some Halloween fall type reads. I definitely think it has that autumnal feel to it. Again, I enjoy the way that you have plants woven into the story. It just feels mysterious and dark and does have a good atmosphere to it. So again, I actually appreciated this one a lot, and while it wasn't entirely up my alley, I do think other people will really love this because I think it accomplishes what it's trying to do quite well. It's just not, again, pushing the right buttons to be an all-time favorite for me, but I definitely liked it for what it was doing. So recommend to the right audience if that's you. Next up, we have A Guidebook to the Apocalypse by Hollie Overton, and this is a story that is set from the perspective of this daughter, and she's aware of what she's being told about who her mother was at the start of this apocalypse. At the beginning of the story, she gets access to read this guide or this diary type entry to find out more about her mother and what happened during this apocalypse. It is a piece of young adult horror, and you do want to know that going in. I wasn't entirely aware of that when I did request this one. I was interested And given the synopsis, I should have sorted that out given that this character is listed as 18, but a very young 18. And so with this one, it is technically a story that could be listed as apocalyptic horror fiction, but it really is more of a character study about, again, this daughter and her relationship to her mother, who she really only knows, again, through other people telling their stories. And so she is learning who she was and everything she went to in order to help her daughter survive and so forth. So I will say that for me, I didn't love this one because, again, if you're going in looking for that horror apocalyptic narrative, it's very much in the backdrop of the story. It's just really the setup. And I do tend to love stories that are about mother relationships, but I tend to really like the messy ones. And this one felt a bit too bittersweet. It just is one that, again, is very character focused, but for me, the character work is very simplistic in the way you often see with young adult books, where you don't want to bring out too much ugliness or morally gray characters in that development. And so this one just felt safe and easy. And again, I'm technically putting this in the horror section of this video, but if you're going in expecting horror elements and really someone who loves apocalyptic fiction, I just don't think you're necessarily going to get what you're looking for from this book. If you're someone who reads YA quite regularly, not necessarily horror or dystopian type ones, I think that you'll enjoy this one a lot more because it definitely felt like a really safe, standard tropey YA book, which unfortunately is just not up my alley. Next we have Girl in the Creek by Wendy Wagner, and this is a story that follows a young woman whose brother has gone missing. He's not the only person who's gone missing, and then they end up finding the body of this girl in the creek. It kind of sets off this story. This is one that in my mind was a very simplistic, basic horror story, and as anyone like myself who reads very heavily in this genre, this one just felt basic, I think is what the young kids say these days. It didn't really do anything I haven't seen before, and again, it's relatively short. And it didn't really have an oomph or a gut punch or some kind of twist or turn that I found really justified the story existing. It's not to say that story is bad. I think if it's one of the very first horror stories you pick up, you'll probably enjoy it more just because, again, you'll be less familiar with those tropes. But at this point, I can be and am a harsh judge of the genre because, again, I've read so much of it that I want to see new authors doing something new. If a book is being published today, I expect the book or the author to be attempting to really add something to the genre rather than just recreating a familiar story that people have read over and over again in different forms, which is exactly how I felt about this one. Next is Red Rabbit Ghost by Julian, and this is a story that follows a young man who, as an infant child, his mother was found dead mysteriously and he really never got to find out what happened. He then has moved on, however, he gets these mysterious messages that bring him back to his town and trying to investigate, figure out what is happening. This one was not a 5-star read for me, but I actually quite enjoyed the town atmosphere. I feel like it did a really good job of having that kind of mysterious feeling of going back to the town, revisiting your past, all of that, which again is something that is very tropey, but something about the execution in terms of the setting and again the general tone of the story worked quite well for me. It is very character focused and I did find it interesting. It just, again, didn't really grab me in a way that tends to lend itself to a favorite of the year, but I definitely think that this one has really good elements to it. So again, it largely is going to depend on if you're someone like myself who finds that premise somewhat interesting, or if it sounds amazing and you're just really drawn to these type of stories, you'll likely have a better chance of loving this book a bit more than I did, because again, I thought it was well done, but it wasn't a premise that I was dying to read and dying to know what happened. It felt like a kind of simple story, but a simple story done relatively well, if that makes sense. Now switching over to talk more about thrillers, mysteries, and other pieces of dark fiction that aren't necessarily horror. The first one I want to talk about is The Library at Hellebore, which is by Cassandra Khaw. I have read and enjoyed many of her previous books before, so just go into that if you haven't loved her other books. I know they can be a little bit hit or miss on the internet and among readers, that I go into this book expecting to like it, given the fact that I've loved a lot she has done in the past. Now this one is a piece of dark academia centering around a school for the gifted. So these are individuals that have powers. Think of the Xavier School in X-Men, similar to that, where they have powers, and then the idea is that they're going to turn these people from being monsters into actually functional people in society. And so I really enjoyed the premise of this one. It has a lot of elements focusing around the things you would expect to see in dark academia. There are characters that are doing sort of backstabbing and, you know, who do you trust and who do you align with? A lot of the focus is around women, and I really enjoy kind of that female student dynamics where you very much have your friends, but your friends can also be your enemies and so forth, and kind of maneuvering around. And overall, just the interesting premise, which again, isn't something I've never seen done before, but I did quite enjoy here. I did obviously read this in the summer as I'm recording this video, but I would say that for me, dark academia works best in the fall. So if you are again looking for books to stack in your September and October list, personally, I would encourage you to put this one amongst there if you love dark academia. I know that there are people who read every single book that comes out, and I do think that this one is worth it if you're a fan of that subgenre. And to wrap up this video, I do want to talk about a mystery series I was sent, and these are all in the Billy Levine series. I actually have read and reviewed the first book, Death of Dancing Queen, but Datura sent me another copy when they sent the sequels. And so to talk a little bit more about the other books, the entire series focuses around a young woman who works as a private investigator. And as a huge fan of the TV show Veronica Mars, this gave me very similar vibes. It's certainly not a copycat directly. It is all its own universe, but you have again someone who is not involved in law enforcement and is a younger type woman, and she is using this as a way again to treat it like a business and so forth. And each book is relatively self-contained, but there is character development as there is with most mystery series, so I do recommend reading them in order. And so there is this one, Devil in Profile, where we have the main character getting involved in the murder of an art collector, and there are ties that pull in individuals from her personal life that might be involved. Very interesting, and I did really like it as a different perspective. While it does have a murder at the center of it, I thought it was an interesting take or an interesting twist that was a little bit different. And then this one I particularly liked just because it had a bit of a different focus. This was focusing on the PI work that I think is actually quite common in the actual profession, where she is taking pictures of individuals that are potentially cheating on their spouses. So a lot of that getting evidence in order to support a divorce case. And so that one is kind of focused around here. And of course, as you expect, something else and more larger than her original assignment gets pulled out and comes to the surface. And I just really enjoy this one. Again, these books are just ones that I find very comforting, easy to read. I've said before that this is kind of the year of mysteries for me, where I'm just enjoying mysteries that don't necessarily have even a really dark element, but I'm enjoying kind of using my brain again. Those kind of logic pieces as you're trying to figure out the mystery as you're going along. And I do find that these ones again are enjoyable, great character work, not necessarily again as dark as some of the mysteries I've recommended over the years, but at the same time really fun to go through and having enough seriousness to them, enough of a dark, serious tone that it does appeal to me as a reader who leans away from things that I would truly describe as cozy. I wouldn't go so far with these ones, but instead they have a good balance between, again, being light and dark at just the right places. So that's it for this video here. I'd love to know of the books I talked about. Are there any that you're planning on checking out for yourself? And you probably guessed that the reason that it took me a while to put together this video is the fact that I did have a lot of lukewarm feelings about a lot of these books. There are only a couple that I personally would really widely recommend, and even within that, I do think it again depends on what type of reader you are, which subgenres you enjoy. And for me, while I enjoy giving recommendations to all of you, what I'm really always looking for is new favorites for my personal taste. And so I'm really going to be focusing this fall on trying to request and order and track down the books that I really think are going to be right up my alley, focusing again on quality over quantity, because again, if I read too many just okay books in a row, it does tend to dampen my love for dark fiction. And I start to think, is it a me problem or is it the genre? And really, again, I think it comes down to me being a little bit more selective what I'm requesting for review. Of course, I don't always get approved, but at least focusing on the things that I think are going to be more up my alley. Hope you all are having a really good summer. I'd love to know what you are reading. Drop it down below. I do read all my comments, even though I'm not as great during the summer as replying to as many as I'd like, but definitely I do appreciate it. It really makes me smile. And again, I'm even open to negative comments as long as they're kind and constructive. But if you enjoyed this video, hopefully you stick around, subscribe, hit the little notification bell, give me a thumbs up if I deserved it, drop a comment, even just an emoji like the sun or something to represent the summer months. And I will talk to you again soon in another video. Thanks, goodbye.